Welcome to Autism, the show that's always unique, totally interesting, and sometimes mysterious.
And on this show, we'll be talking about and sharing all things autism. We have, who you just heard, Aimee Hogan, myself, Dick Dawson, and we have Booleanenator.
That's right, Dick, and we'll be looking at autism in all the forms it can take, from little toddlers to adults as well, because it is not just a childhood thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and tonight's episode is all about meltdowns. Let's get right into it, please.
Absolutely good idea. You going to take us through the first one then, Aimee?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So for that first one, what is a meltdown? A meltdown is a reaction to trying to process too much sensory input all at once. Too much input can be overwhelming to anyone from children to adults. While they may look the same, meltdowns are much different than tantrums.
That's such a key point too, isn't it? Because there's a massive difference. Yes. We're not talking about Karening out and just being very frustrated and kicking and screaming and stuff. A meltdown is triggered by factors that shouldn't trigger a tantrum, and therefore you've got the big difference. Would you say that's about right?
I would say that, yeah, definitely. And it's not something that anybody can help who has a meltdown. It's because it is brought on by sensory issues and sensory overload. Yeah, where a tantrum is, I want your attention. I have a goal in mind, so it's a big difference.
Yep. What do you call an ice cream that's out in the sun too much? A meltdown. Get
it? Love it. I love it.
That was good. Good job.
Good one, Matt. Now, as the adult who's discovered what's going on more or less there, Boole, what's your take on knowing a meltdown versus a tantrum now, but as a child not having that guidance, right?
Well, there was several times I recall growing up that I just kind of something would drive me nuts, and I brought up in the previous episode I got lost on the Great Sand Dunes. That, in retrospect, what happened to me would have been a meltdown, because the wind and the sand and all that stuff just blowing, that was too much sensory overload. And aside from the panic of not knowing where I am and where my parents were, it was too much, and I literally couldn't deal with it and had a meltdown.
Yep, that's exactly it. Let's see here. Boole, do you want to take us through the next one?
Sure, Dick. The difference between meltdowns and tantrums. Now, this gets more into what we were just saying. A tantrum is an angry or frustrated outburst. Meltdowns come from being overwhelmed and can't be helped. There's nothing anyone can do to stop the meltdown.
That's right.
That's right.
And I think that's the key reason why we wanted to talk about it, because you have to be in tune to see those little triggers, or whatever word you want to use, that, oh, wait a minute, I just saw something and I know where this is going. And so knowing the difference is the only way you can sort the signs out.
Yep.
Exactly.
So, and also keep in mind that while you can't prevent a meltdown, you can actually be aware of the things you're going to be contributing to someone who has autism's meltdown. You need to be aware of what, and it takes knowing that person specifically, because all of our triggers, all of our little things that build up bother us are different. So
yeah, darn good point. Excellent. Aimee, anything else to add, or should we slide along?
I think we should just slide right along, because you covered it all.
All right. So let me, how to help someone who is having a meltdown. So now this is where we get into, we'll get into something. So let's go to the next one here and we'll read a couple out. Help them stay safe, since the person may unintentionally hurt themselves or yourself, And 2, develop a calming strategy to help the person afterward. And there can be a long afterward. So that's a very good point. It's not just about, trying to head them off at the pass, but they're going to happen. So you need some tools. Definitely.
Oh, definitely. Yep, definitely. We've been through a few of them, haven't we?
Yes, about the meltdowns of thunderstorms. I had a meltdown on thunderstorms.
Yeah, and it's okay, honey. But we work through it and we keep you safe.
What's your meltdown about? What did you have a meltdown about?
Mama, sometimes too much noise bugs her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sometimes noise will do that. Like if too many people are talking at once, I can't differentiate between the words that they're saying and their voices. So that's where Mommy has a hard time with that.
That's the cafeteria.
Yep. That was school.
That's the cat. Yeah, I agree 100% with that statement. When I was growing up and going to school, sometimes just lunch, I wanted to get there, I wanted to eat, and I wanted to get away from all the people there. That's it. I would go somewhere else for the rest of the time.
Yep, that sounds about right. They used to think that sending you back to your classroom to eat your lunch there was a punishment. Not for this kid.
Nope. Now, me and a couple of the guys that turned out to be somewhat on the spectrum as, we get older and learn, we were musicians and we would always just hide off on our own and go and, grab guitars and sit and play and stuff. And that way we could avoid all of it. It was so nice.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, Aimee, up for the next one?
Sure. Number 3 is know when the person is escalating. Track the signs and clues that a meltdown is coming.
And number 4 is keep yourself calm so as not to add the escalation.
That's right. Good job. I'm
Very
glad
good,
I'm going to
Matt.
need the reader for the next one.
Okay, then.
Alrighty, I guess you just told us. But that's very true. If you ever watch your children, you can always see, it's obvious that he's going to have, because he's getting all keyed up, he starts pacing, he gets nervous, he might be stimming more, he might be echoing more, and doing a whole bunch of different things. And that's when okay, let's either get to a nice quiet place or have him come sit down or something. So one of those things.
Yes. And I find to keep yourself calm is seriously important. Mm-hmm. Any escalation in the tone of my voice when dealing with Felix during a meltdown is just catastrophic. It's so bad. You have to be so careful with how you present yourself in the moment.
That's like adding fire that's like adding gas to a fire when you do it. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just adding even more sensory stuff.
Yeah. And this is really good for me. Like, one of my big signs that I'm having a meltdown is I'm trying to get away from the situation. It's a protective mechanism to try to get away from the stimulation, right? So you're trying to get away from the situation, and the person that for me, it was arguing with my ex. Did it a lot. Go figure. And she would try to follow me. In fact, she would actively try to prevent me from getting away from her. And that was the wrong thing to do in some cases. So many cases. Like, if you'd just let me go, walk it off, that's fine. But if you're going to sit there and not give me the time I need to come down from the argument, then I'm not going to listen anymore at that point. I shut you out. I just go into meltdown mode.
Yeah. It's over then. Absolutely. You
Definitely.
If you're not helping open the lines of communication so that there can actually be some kind of, then all you're doing is, doing that. You're basically the ammo coming out of the gun, and you're just making it so it doesn't end.
Right. Exactly.
I think we got that pretty good. Should we, next one? remember. Oh, was Matt going to go next year?
Oh, that's okay. You can go ahead if you want.
Okay. We'll get him in next year. Remember to keep the things that cause sensory overloads to a minimum. So again, like as you're, interacting with the person, friend, child, brother, whatever, you want to keep a mental note of the little things that cause little triggers. Because if you get 3 in a row, there you go. Not a good situation, right? And never hesitate to ask for help, because there's so many resources out there, including other parents and us here on the show and so on. But if you're feeling overwhelmed and you're the one that has to guide somebody through it, then get the guidance, right? Why not?
Yes.
You're crazy not to. Don't take it all on yourself, because there's always somebody around.
Absolutely. There's always someone out there who can help. And I've even asked the neighbor for help, my landlord. She was standing there and said, "Oh, I just need to talk about this," just to help me calm down, so I felt better and was able to face helping Matt during his meltdown time, because it was a stormy week and we'd had so many, and it is exhausting. So, to get that help, I was able to do that. Even like I said, even the next door neighbor, just to be able to vent for a minute.
Mm-hmm. And there's Facebook groups and stuff, and people like in local communities that get together. So, check with the local autism providers, people that do occupational therapy and speech therapy and so on, because they will have the inside track to help you get connected. Right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And Bull, what's your take on this there?
Well, it goes back to what I was saying. You keep things that cause sensory overloads to a minimum, and if you're the person on the outside, those things could be you and what you're doing. So that's something that you need to be aware of. Like, you could be, like we've said, adding fuel to the fire, and that's looking back on things. Of course, in a school setting, this is kind of hard, because oftentimes the kids are deliberately doing it to be mean. For example, it's a bullying tactic sometimes, and I firmly remember that in my past. Like, they knew that it would just get to me, and I would literally have to leave then to get away from it.
Yes.
So, and as far as reaching out for help, this applies not only to the person on the outside, but to the person having the meltdown. If you can remember to ask for help, that's a huge thing.
Yeah, I couldn't overstate that. Exactly, right?
Exactly. And there's always someone who is more than willing to help you if you're having that meltdown, who can, even if it's just to sit there and listen, or just let you know that it's okay, and everything like that. So
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think for the next slide here, Boole or Matt, I'm lost in our rotation here, but we got another category on the take. So I'm sure somebody will take us through it. It won't be me though.
Matt, you want this one?
Hey Matt, this is a good one for you. You want to come read it? Oh, I can't hear him. He's
okay.
So,
okay.
I'll go ahead and grab it then. Meltdowns at school.
Okay.
They can be brought on by many triggers. So there's a couple things that we're going to go through here, and we'll go through one slide at a time here. If you're a parent, you want to work with the school to create a meltdown plan. Like, what works for one, it's not a one-size-fits-all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. What works for one child could actually make it worse for another child.
Yes.
And if there's some objects that help the child get through a meltdown, or if there's something that will comfort them, that'll be a kit. And if that's allowed by the school, the school can control the location of that kit, and can keep it it for the child, so that it's always available should they have a meltdown and they know about it, as opposed to them keeping it, losing it somewhere. So that's something to consider.
Yeah. It's definitely the having a plan for each individual child is a must, because like with my son, as soon as the school would notice a few of the triggers and see his behavior escalate a bit, what they would do is they would, steer him out of the classroom or out of the private little tutoring room he was in, depending on, what he was doing during the day. And, they would head outside so he could get a little bit of a stretch and get the muscles going and, maybe run around the track a couple of times. He's a very active guy. And that would really, really help. And if you don't work with the school, how are they going to know that? Right?
Absolutely. I mean, I know everybody at the middle school. It's going to be that way for the high school very soon, but they all know who I am, because I'm constantly in there saying, well, here's this, or what, I'm in there asking questions. I'm, telling them what works best at home, what could send him into a meltdown, what sensory issues he might have. We have here in the U.S. what's called an IEP. I'm not sure how they do it in other places, which is an individualized education plan. And all of that should actually all be in there too, like your plans for what happens during a meltdown. If he can have a kit, what he can do, what he can't do. We had at the middle school, the one we just left, he had a quiet room that he liked to go into. And one of the helpers in the classroom would go with him and sit with him quietly until he was able to calm down, which worked great. And he liked it in there. Sometimes I think I need to go in there. Yeah. So, which is actually good, because then he's starting to recognize it in himself as well. So he's able to articulate now that I think I need some help. So, that's monumental too. So you got to work with your child on that too. And sometimes they can even help you with a plan.
Yeah. Once they become a little bit more aware like that of things, the doors start to open a bit more, because, when they recognize it and can see it coming or whatever, if, that's a moment that can really be worked and it can really be used to take things further along.
Absolutely.
No, definitely. And
Yes.
what was the other point I was going to make there? Hopefully it's not gone. In Canada with the IEP, we do the same thing, but a meltdown kit or plan was not actually part of it. That was something that just, parents would either do or not do. And so, interesting that it's in yours, because I just might have to bring that up in the very near future up here. That might be a good idea, right?
Exactly. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to ever ask a question like that. And I wanted that in there. And one thing that parents too need to remember, they're actually the head of the team that makes the IEP. That's what I've always been told throughout the school district. I'm the mother, so obviously I know my child top to bottom. So it's and I asked for that to be put in his IEP. I said, could we please, that way the teachers can always go back and look over it. It's documented and everything is right in there. And that's also helpful if it can't be followed, then you can look back and change it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't the IEP go between schools? Like what works, so it goes with the child. So if they change districts or they move from middle school to high school, an example of Matt, that high school already has that plan that's been working for all those years, and they know what helps. So it's very helpful to have it as early as possible if it's needed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because we just had an IEP meeting just before the school year ended for high school. So, and that was while he was still in middle school. So yeah, it carries on until the end of their school career. So
yeah. And when Felix transferred from one school to the other, they got the entire history of them, because then you can look over them and you can go, oh, see, look, that really has a track record and so on. And it really helps, right? Quantitative data, right?
Exactly. It shows what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. So who's next here? is Amy's up next.
Yes, please. The third thing is check with the teacher to see if they have a quiet place where your child can manage the meltdown. And that's something that I made a mistake, and we actually kind of covered a little bit in the last one. But yeah, if they have a designated place for that, and if it's always the same, and it's a really nice calming area, that's perfect. And always, talk to them. Try to, get as much information from them, and try to give them as much information from you as well. Have a working relationship with them, and we've done that, and I've actually had a whole tour of his classrooms, which I'm going to be doing this fall if the school opens back up, just to check where things are and how they handle things, and I can help them figure out what works best in there.
And you can go so far as to, bring a little picture. We did this in kindergarten, and there was one picture that was Felix's from home that was on the wall. And if he was ever getting a little bit, this or that, he had that, and he could just look over, and there was that piece of, yay, that's mine.
Right.
Work the charm.
It goes back to giving the person control of their environment. If they have a meltdown, it's unfortunate, but it's unavoidable, as we have stated. So it's always comforting, and it could help prevent them going forward, i.e. ease a trigger, if they know that there's a way out, if they're going to be in control of how they come out of the meltdown. That helps tremendously.
Indeed.
Absolutely, it does.
Knowing what's going to happen.
Exactly. And with us, that's social stories that he has his notebook, and he brings that to school with him with his social stories in it that I've made, so that it's something from home that he's very familiar with and doesn't change like where he is in school. So that always works too. It could be anything that they could use that's calming for them.
Yes, and it's important, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Does that make it my slide then? Yes, it does. Why can't I keep up? What is going on with me today? I'm following the conversation perfectly, but don't ask me to keep a number 3 rotation. It's so weird. Okay, here we go. Number 4. Work together with your child's teachers to create a schedule so that your child knows what to expect throughout the day. And the routine is absolutely crucial to managing the emotional stability of a child during the day, because when they know what's coming and they can look forward to something, or, they just have the structure in place. It's so important. And make sure you really, really follow through on it when you lay it out, though. Unless, the powers that be, what you're going to do now and then, but follow through. Right. Wow.
Absolutely. And like you said, as much as possible. And I can't tell you how well it works. When we first started homeschooling after the schools shut down and we started remote learning, it was pure chaos until I was able to sit down and actually work with his teachers, and we were Zooming back and forth and emailing, and we worked on a schedule together for the whole entire day. And after that, it was just like night and day, just him having that physical thing that shows him, well, I know what I'm doing next. And structure, kids even who don't have autism thrive with structure. So having that actually is amazing. So
yes,
definitely.
Yes. Anything there, Bull?
Well, I kind of covered this earlier a bit too. Like I think it's fine if I didn't know this was coming up, so I guess this is great. So yes, you do want knowing what to expect on the way into a meltdown and on the way out is crucial to making it bearable.
Mm-hmm. And it's easier on the adult or the outside person helping the person with the meltdown, right? That's absolutely important. I think it's Bull's turn.
Bedtime meltdowns for children and adults. It's not uncommon that something happens at the end of the day when I'm tired for it to be easier to put me into this state. Going shopping after work was always just like, "Ugh, not again." And if it was Christmas time, forget it, not happening. So it was, that's towards the end of the day stuff is when stuff builds up and you need to process it. And if you're not given that opportunity, it can lead to a meltdown.
Absolutely.
So we need to provide a calm bedroom to encourage sleep. Sleep does wonders for these. One of the best ways out is to sleep it off. And you want to avoid caffeine and sugar at bedtime because that's with any kid, right? Sugar? You don't want sugar rushes. We don't need them up all night with a cup of coffee, It's just not appropriate. So
and if we have 7-year-olds with caffeine in their system before bed, that's a whole other bag of worms, people. That's for the adults.
That's it, yeah. Because the adult, after the kid goes to bed, is going to need caffeine just to make it past 8 o'clock.
Now, I have to say, when it comes to this one, my son Felix was catastrophic meltdown child at bedtime. And I did what so many parents would tell you is a bad strategy, but I was convinced I was right. I know how that sounds, trust me. But what I did was I would put Felix on my shoulder, tiny little man, and I would just be, kind of walking around doing that, adult bounce that you do with a tiny one in your hands, that little bounce up and down you do. And he would pass out and then I'd put him to bed. And that solved everything, no problem. And my ex-wife, his mom, would say, you're crazy. All you're going to do is make bedtime a nightmare for him later. But Felix didn't take very long until he was like, 3 or whatever years old. And you could just say, okay, Felix, it's bedtime or whatever. And you'd go and you'd get his hands washed in his face and brush his teeth and stuff. And he'd get into bed and curl up with a big smile on his face and whatnot, grab a teddy. And because he was taught that bedtime was completely happy right now, even to this day, and he's 13 years old, his bedtime hits and I go, okay, buddy, bedtime, let's get ourselves all ready. And he just stops what he's doing, hits save or whatever. And just, and we do the routine and he's the happiest guy to go to bed. And most like when he was 5 years old and we'd have guests over and, they'd come over for supper. We'd all be hanging out and it would be, okay, let's get Felix to bed. And he'd go to bed and I'd come out 2 minutes later, done. And other adults would be like, what? Are you kidding me? That's it? How did you do that? So I kind of, it worked for me, but I know it's not the standard. So, I had to be honest, right? Because that's how we did it.
Exactly. And nobody's perfect. And I've always said that myself. I've made tons of mistakes, I'm sure. But for bedtime, it was always, I love to rock him. And I'd have to sing the same 3 songs every night. And that lasted right up until he was almost as tall as me. So you can picture this big kid sitting on my lap. But you know what? It was our time together. And he knew he was loved, which I'd always told him, that kid's never going to not know that he's loved. And off to bed he goes, and he now knows that I can't hold him anymore because he's a lot taller than me now. So he just goes right straight to bed. Bedtime is a good thing, like with Felix, because hey, sleep's awesome, and and then he gets right up in the morning, and yes, we do have a routine, and I have to wake him up with his critters if I get up first. If not, I get told. I get sheeped. But yep, get the sheep. But yeah, and he's perfectly fine with bedtime. He goes right to bed.
And I'm like, the whole routine thing is so important. Like the times I was most likely to have a bedtime meltdown, looking back on it, would be during the holidays when my parents have adults over and the adults are up and doing the adult things, like probably, we chit-chat and we smoke cigarettes and have drinks or whatever. But we were expected to go to bed. And it's like Christmas time and we just opened all these gifts and we've been eating sugar all day long, right? So that's when you're likely to have a meltdown. So, and just I couldn't get to sleep. It turned into insomnia for me when I was having these things. So, because no one really did anything about them. They just told me to go back in my room and close my eyes and try to sleep. Making a conscious effort to try to go to sleep at that age doesn't work.
No. Nope. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah, routine comes up a lot in these, and I think it will keep coming up. So we might as well get used to saying it. Absolutely. Was it Amy's turn now?
Sure, I can read these if you want. We've got
Sure.
number 3 is establish a bedtime routine. Yes, routine is key to everything. And number 4, tell your child when it's nearly time for bed so they always know what's going to happen next and what to do when it comes up.
Also, and this is one for all parents for sure, because, you know, a lot of us, I mean, you know, here we are hanging out, chatting on YouTube, doing things. So everybody's going to relate to me on this one. Don't expect that your child can just drop what they're doing instantly to do whatever. You know, like if your child's in a game, they've got to be able to get to the darn save spot. Give them a break here. You know, my child, if he's editing a movie or whatever, my son's learning Hit Film Express and all this stuff right now. It's really cool. And if he's in the middle of a render, he can't just put his computer to sleep. That's ridiculous. Be aware, be attentive, right? You know, play ball.
Absolutely. What we do here, I'll say like, 10-minute warning, so that way you can get to your point, and then I'll just keep checking back in. 5-minute warning. And then if he needs help with something, I just let him finish what he needs to. Like you said, get to the save spot on whatever he's doing. And then that way he was able to finish, and then knowing that his whole day is done, having finished that last task he was working on, also helps.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely. Would that make the next one my slide? Yes.
Yeah.
Use sleep aids like weighted stuffed toys, blankets, or special LED lamps. And weighted is big. That feeling of being hugged or whatever is so unbelievably that compression. When my son was in like grade 2 and 3, they had a jacket thingy they'd put on him at school, and he loved it. He thought it was great, and it was like a big hug. And it's fantastic. It works so well. Even in summer, my son likes the feeling of a big blankie. So yeah, I mean, my electric bill gets an AC hit from his room for sure. But what are you gonna do? He likes it, you know.
Yep, and I can't. Yeah, this is just pure Matthew too. I mean, I have a ton of blankets, so what I do is I just keep piling them on top. And that really works too. He loves the feeling of that weight. He's got his stuffed animals that he can squeeze himself, and he loves that. And it just gives him such a feeling of security. When they have all of that on them, they're secure, they feel safe, they're not going anywhere, they're going to be able to go to sleep, and nothing is going to change with them physically while they're laying down. And I've noticed that with Matthew, and yes, the fan is running at full tilt all the time.
Yes, exactly. No, fact card. No, not a straight jacket. How can you tell that? How can you tell that guy's Canadian, right? I love it.
Yeah.
I love Factard. I've known Factard for a number of years now. He was with me in Soundly's chats back in the day. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, Boole, what about you with the weighted stuff and whatnot?
God.
You get that one?
I always slept better when someone tucked me in. Make that part of the going to bed routine. Your parent tucks you in.
Yep.
It's not a childish want or need. It lets you know that person's going to be there when you wake up. Too, right? So it's good to make that part of your one of the last things they do is to have a chat with them. Talk to them a little bit before they go to bed. Don't make it an instant, okay, good night, and then abandon them to their thoughts.
Right.
Right.
Good shout.
Right.
Good shout. I mean, with my son being 13 now, sometimes he's like, yeah, I'm going to watch a video on my iPad. I'm good. Okay, good night. But other times he wants that wind down time, right? You have to be able to read it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. With Matt's the same way. Sometimes he's just ready. Leave me alone, Mama. I want to go to bed. Then other times he wants a back rub or for me to pet his hair or anything like that. And I'm more than happy to do that as long as the kid gets the amount of sleep that he needs. Yep, I'm all down for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he'll go right to sleep, and he'll sleep through the night and soundly too.
Yeah. It's not like you're out cutting wood before bed because that's what works. I mean, these are pretty
Right.
easy tasks, right? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Too funny. And then, Bull, would you like to take the last one for us then?
Sure. Avoid activities that are hard to stop, such as playing video games or watching television. Like, this goes back to being aware of what it is your child's doing, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense to let them start a flight simulator, a brand new flight simulator, an hour before they're supposed to go to bed. It's going to take all day to even learn how to fly one of those planes.
Yes.
Be in tune with what your child likes to do and understand how long the steps are and that kind of stuff. And
and
go ahead.
I would say there's probably different activities that are similar to what's being said here, but that aren't overstimulating. Because, like, if my son was watching a nature documentary about zebras in the wild, he's not overstimulated for bedtime. But if he's watching some crazy kids thing that's just got him bouncing off the walls, then yeah, maybe. So, I think, there's some fine points to that point as well.
Exactly, because like you said, there are gray areas everywhere. Like a nice, calm nature documentary is great. Sometimes there are just short little games he can play. Sometimes I'll see Matt in there playing solitaire. That's not pretty. That's not something that's like, wow.
Exactly.
So,
you can put it down and pick it up and right where you left off 2 days later if you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Go right straight back to that game and it's right there, and he realizes that too. A lot of the times what I'll do is if I've noticed that he's had a really high key day, sometimes just sitting down with him and reading a book for a little while will help calm him down. And so I'll read to him some nights. And that works too. It works amazing because you can end on a chapter and you can say, okay, next chapter, maybe tomorrow or whenever you want to read it again. So,
and when the consumption is you reading, you have control of the pace and how it's being delivered. So you don't have to worry that some pre-recorded thing all of a sudden has 5 children screaming in the background. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, great. Thanks.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Exactly right.
Exactly. So that's what we do too. Those are some of the things that we've done. We read sometimes, or we'll maybe play a game of cards together at night, or just have something that's calming like that. Something that can be stopped on a whim and can be come back. You can come back to it after you've slept or something. So
yeah, exactly. So, anything more, Bull?
Not tonight. No, I think that's the end of our presentation, and we want you to keep coming back for these because we want it to be part of your routine.
Oh, yes. Well said.
Yes.
I see what you did there. That's awesome.
That was awesome.
Well, yeah.
Good job.
Yeah. Why don't we flip over to the other little and the more active set, and we can let a few people see the animations. Maybe if we stay long enough. But yeah, the doors open sometimes, and the globe is rotating and whatnot. We papped in some Easter eggs to have some fun, but hopefully.
Exactly.
everybody liked our initiation or our initial covering of meltdowns. Going forward, as we get some of the topics covered in general, we'll start getting into the deeper points one at a time. But, to bring the show in, we thought we'd cover it in a more roundabout way at first. Does that sound right, Aimee?
Yeah, that's exactly what we figured we'd do, is ease everybody into it a little bit.
Yeah. And then coming forward, we got plans to invite people on the show, and we'll have, members of the community and their kids coming in and stuff, or people that are autistic themselves as adults and so on. But we want to lay a bit more groundwork first, and then we'll start opening it up a bit more. And, Bull, what were we going to do for next week? What was that again?
Well, part of avoiding meltdowns, as we all know, is you have to have a way to get rid of excess energy. So I thought we'd cover stimming next week.
Excellent.
Ooh, excellent. That's an
I love
excellent thing to cover. I do too.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, so during the week, we're going to get a nice presentation ready, and we're going to cover the topic of stimming. And I think at that point, we can wrap it up here. For myself and Aimee Hogan and Booleanenator, thanks very much for joining us on Autism, and we will see you next week. Take care, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Good night.